The All Blacks have taken another huge step forward on their rugby's greatest rivalry tour, crushing the Sharks 54-0 at a completely waterlogged Kings Park in Durban. But while the scoreline tells the story of an 8-try demolition, the real significance of this performance may be found in the way New Zealand adapted to conditions that were almost impossible for normal attacking rugby, with Jordie Barrett producing a superb display of control, kicking, decision-making, and leadership as the visitors showed exactly why they cannot be judged purely by the result of one match when the much bigger challenge against the Springboks arrives. The conditions in Durban were extraordinary, with heavy rain turning Kings Park into something closer to a swimming pool than a conventional rugby field. Yet the All Blacks somehow managed to find ways to play effective rugby while the Sharks struggled to turn possession and territory into points. The final statistics were brutal for the home side. New Zealand scored 8 tries, converted 7 of them, and finished with 54 points, while the Sharks could not find a single point, giving Dave Rennie's team a second consecutive victory on their South African tour. But the scoreline actually hides an important part of the match, because for roughly the first 40 minutes, the Sharks were competitive and created genuine problems for the All Blacks. J.P. Pietersen's side enjoyed significant possession and territory during the opening half, including several visits deep inside the New Zealand 22, yet they could not turn that pressure into points. The All Blacks, by contrast, had less possession but were more efficient, finding ways to attack when opportunities appeared and going into the interval with a 14-0 advantage. That difference in efficiency ultimately became the defining feature of the match. The Sharks were working extremely hard to create opportunities, while New Zealand were able to turn relatively limited opportunities into points. After halftime, the balance shifted dramatically, with the All Blacks taking much greater control of possession and territory and eventually overwhelming the home side. For tries arrived between the 45th and 62nd minutes, transforming a competitive contest into a one-sided procession and demonstrating the depth and attacking variety available to Rennie. The most impressive aspect, however, was the way New Zealand understood that the wet conditions required intelligent rugby rather than simply conservative rugby. In a match like this, the obvious temptation is to shorten the passing, carry directly into contact, and wait for the opposition to make mistakes. But the All Blacks showed that difficult weather does not necessarily mean abandoning skill. Instead, they adjusted their execution. Kicks were carefully weighted. Attacking movements were chosen according to the space available, and players showed remarkable awareness of how quickly the ball could become unpredictable on the saturated surface. Jordie Barrett was at the center of that approach, and his performance demonstrated why experience and rugby intelligence can become more valuable than raw athleticism when the conditions become chaotic. Barrett understood when to kick, when to carry, when to move the ball, and when to slow the game down, and that control allowed the All Blacks to play the conditions rather than fight against them. His performance was ultimately recognized with the official Player of the Match award, and it was easy to understand why. The weather created one of the strangest moments of the entire evening when Damian McKenzie appeared to have scored after attacking through the wet conditions, only for the surface to cause him to slide and lose control as he attempted to ground the ball. It was a perfect illustration of the unusual conditions confronting both teams. Every kick was dangerous because the ball could skid unexpectedly. Every tackle could become a slide, and every attacking movement required an extra level of concentration. Even the technology used by officials was challenged, with the television match official unable to make a clear decision during one grounding review because the spray and water made the footage difficult to interpret. Yet, instead of allowing those conditions to destroy their structure, the All Blacks continued to find solutions. Ruben Love produced an outstanding long-range 50:22, showing the importance of tactical kicking when the field was saturated. Quinn Tupaea also demonstrated excellent awareness, using kicks and passes to create attacking opportunities, while Caleb Clarke showed the kind of wet weather instincts that coaches dream about. Rather than attempting to catch every high ball normally, Clarke demonstrated awareness of the conditions and was able to tap the ball back and keep possession alive. These moments may appear small, but they explain why the All Blacks were able to dominate a match that could easily have become a messy kicking contest. The statistics also underline the quality of the individual performances. Caleb Clarke carried the ball 16 times for 60 meters, while Preston produced 84 running meters from scrum half, the most on the field. Fehi Fineanganofo was particularly dangerous, beating 6 defenders and making 3 clean breaks while scoring 2 tries. An impressive contribution from a player still developing his international career. Quinn Tupaea also carried strongly, while Jordie Barrett combined attacking quality with excellent tactical management. New Zealand did not simply wait for the Sharks to collapse. They actively created pressure and then exploited the opportunities that followed. That will be one of the most encouraging aspects for Rennie because the upcoming Springboks series will require precisely that kind of adaptability. The Springboks will not offer the same amount of space. They will not be satisfied with simply surviving, and they certainly will not allow New Zealand to dominate territory without responding physically. That is why the victory must be placed into context. The Sharks were not at full strength, with several players unavailable because of international duty, injuries, and other commitments, and J.P. Peterson had already acknowledged that his side was not operating at full capacity. At the same time, New Zealand must avoid reading too much into the scoreline. A 54-0 victory can create headlines, but South Africa will not be remotely comparable to the Sharks team that took the field in Durban. The first test at Ellis Park will require greater accuracy, greater physicality, and greater mental discipline. Rennie will need to ensure that the players understand the difference between confidence and complacency. The victory should make the All Blacks confident, but it should not make them believe the hardest part of the tour has already been completed. In reality, the most difficult challenge is still waiting. The Springboks will be stronger, more experienced and tactically prepared, and Rassie Erasmus will be determined to prevent New Zealand from playing the type of free-flowing rugby they produced in the second half against the Sharks. The big question now is whether Jordie Barrett can continue to provide the same level of control when the pressure reaches another level. His performance in Durban was outstanding because he understood the conditions, made smart decisions, and helped the All Blacks turn a difficult environment into an advantage. Against the Springboks, that intelligence could be even more valuable. Every kick will need to be precise, every territorial decision will matter, and every opportunity will have to be taken. The same applies to Quinn Tupaea, Caleb Clarke, Fehi Fineanganofo, Ruben Love, Kyle Preston, and the rest of the squad. Every player involved in the tour is effectively competing for a role in the 4-test series, and performances like this can change the selection picture dramatically. The All Blacks have now won their first 2 tour matches, first against the Stormers and then against the Sharks, and they have demonstrated 2 different sides of their game. The first victory showed resilience in a competitive contest, while the second displayed ruthless control in extreme conditions. That combination is encouraging for Rennie because a successful test team must be capable of winning in different ways. The final verdict, however, will come against the Springboks. Until then, the 54-0 victory should be viewed as an important step rather than a final statement. New Zealand have shown they can handle the rain, control territory, defend their line, and exploit opportunities, while Jordie Barrett has demonstrated that he can become a major tactical weapon when the conditions demand intelligence rather than instinct. Mare Nonu has provided the emotional story, Fehi Fineanganofo has strengthened his attacking credentials, and Dave Rennie has been given another reason to believe that his squad has the depth required for the enormous challenge ahead. The Sharks may have been overwhelmed, but their match against the All Blacks has provided a fascinating preview of what could come next. The waterlogged Kings Park contest will eventually disappear into the history of the tour, but the lessons will remain. New Zealand learned how to play in extreme conditions, learned that tactical kicking can be just as dangerous as running rugby, and learned that their squad contains players capable of stepping up when opportunities arrive. The Springboks, however, will not give them the same freedom. South Africa will bring an entirely different level of intensity, and Rassie Erasmus will make sure his team is ready to challenge every aspect of the All Blacks game. That is why the biggest conclusion from Durban is not that New Zealand are already ready to defeat the Springboks. It is that they are becoming increasingly prepared for the kind of rugby that South Africa will demand. The 54-0 scoreline is impressive, the 8 tries are spectacular, and the clean sheet is significant, but the real value lies in the improvement. Dave Rennie wanted his players to become better as the tour progressed, and against the Sharks, they delivered exactly that. Now the challenge is to take the lessons from the rain-soaked victory in Durban, carry the confidence into the next match against the Bulls, and then turn all of that preparation into a performance capable of challenging the Springboks when rugby's greatest rivalry reaches its true destination. Jordie Barrett has shown the way. The young All Blacks are pushing for their opportunity. The experienced players are sharpening their game, and the entire squad is beginning to understand what South African rugby demands. The Sharks may have been washed away 54-0, but the real test is still coming, and when the All Blacks walk into Ellis Park to face South Africa, the conditions, the pressure, and the opposition will bear no resemblance to what they experienced in Durban.